Well, here we are. This is the second video on my anticipation for the upcoming event of Halloween Horror Nights 25, just 1 week from today. Oh, I'm giddy. I almost broke something. I should be careful with that sort of thing. My goodness. And this is the second video I'm making about this, as you probably noticed if you looked at the title. Anticipation 2 or something like that. I don't know what I'm going to call it, but something of that sort. At any rate, yes, we have a theme and an icon this year. And not only that, nine haunted houses. Oh joy. Not 7, not 8, but 9. The first time we've ever had that many houses. And the more nights than we've ever had, ever. 30 nights of horror nights. Beginning on the earliest possible date, the 18th of September. That's a day earlier than the earliest date before. And even more exciting, there shall be no midnight closings at the event this year. Every night the event will run at least as late as 1 o'clock in the morning, and on the peak nights, 2 o'clock in the morning. No midnight closings. A lot more time to do everything you want to do. To see 9 houses, 5 scare zones, and 2 shows. It just boggles the imagination. I'm just so happy about all of that. And the houses, oh, I am looking forward to those houses. Anticipated them greatly. Of course, Jack will have his own signature house. Jack Presents 25 Years of Monsters Mayhem, where we are told we shall see scenes from many classic Halloween Horror Nights houses, from the media and official releases the past couple of days, from Mike Aiello's Twitter feed to things the media has released. We already know that we'll see scenes from The Forsaken, those sailors on their voyage of damnation. We'll be seeing the Nightingales again for the first time since 2011, along with the Forsaken sailors. We'll be seeing Gothic, those gargoyles in that cathedral of living stone. And there'll also be seen some classic Universal monsters, such as Frankenstein and probably Dracula. I think the Mummy, because I saw some Egyptian-looking artifacts in one of the pictures of set pieces and costume and design elements that were at that presentation on September 8th. Some of the photographs and videos they presented, I distinctly saw some Egyptian artifacts. That sounds to me like Imhotep is going to be there. And scenes from Scary Tales are going to be there, and other interesting houses. But what most excites a lot of people is that Michael Aiello told us HR Blood and Guts will be in the house. So there are quite a few houses from 2011, which is really a remarkable year for haunted houses, if you think about it. Some of the fan favorites, but HR Blood and Guts has become a cult figure, almost as big as an icon, so having him come back is a big deal, because everyone wanted him to come back ever since that house. And we've had lots of talk about Jack will be in the house with Chance, but apparently he'll not just be introducing it, he's going to be all through the house, taking all sorts of various incarnations, you know, popping up in other people's storylines, because what do you expect from an evil clown? That sounds fun. And there may be other iconic characters in there as well, because the picture they showed of the picture a nice lady from USA Today posted from the... If I do this, you can actually see me. How interesting. On internet recently shows, in addition to the clown face facade, there's posters, carnival posters of the Storyteller, just like the one on Hollywood Boulevard for that scare zone, but also one of Cindy. That was really exciting because we didn't see Cindy. Oh, look, you can see me. If I do this, you can really see me clearly. How interesting. If I hold my hands up, how does that change? I must be doing something for a light sensor. How weird. But anyway, keep the shadows off. If I put my hands in front of the light, you can see me better than if I let the light shine directly on me. So there must be some sort of light detecting doohickey in the computer face here. How odd. Anyway, getting back to it then. Where was I? Oh yeah, so Cindy may very well be in there, and some other iconic characters as well, so it should be a wonderful experience of reliving many classic events of Halloween Horror Nights for the past quarter century in that one house, which is going to be huge, an enormous house. It's going to be in Soundstage 21. They're going to fill the whole damn soundstage and have 15 scenes. They've never had 15 scenes in a house before, not even that Walking Dead house they talked about so much last year being big. This may be bigger than that. You know, I always like big ones. Anyway, so, and Freddy versus Jason. Oh, that's exciting. Now, Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees have been to the event before, of course, and most recently in 2007, when they had their own houses. But, you know, they wanted to do a bit of the Freddy and Jason conflict in that year. They wanted, I've been told by people who claim to know this, and it's been printed in books and on the internet, the information claiming that they meant for Jason to be in a scene in the boiler room in that Nightmare on Elm Street Dreamwalker's house back in 2007. He's supposed to have been in a cage in that room, like Freddy had captured him, and maybe they meant for Freddy to make a cameo in Jason's house, I don't know. But I know for a fact that they had meant to have a scare zone that year featuring both characters. But New Line Cinema said, oh, no, you cannot have any of our characters together. They must be individually separate in their own houses and not mix them around. So they weren't allowed to do that, and they had to scrap all those ideas. But this year they're allowed to bring Freddy and Jason together at last. And it's quite exciting, and it's not directly based on the film, but on the whole idea of these two characters and their natural conflict, because after all, they are obviously antagonistic with each other, so opposite. You know, it's been said before that Jason died by water and Freddy died by fire, but there's a lot more than that. Jason kills with a great big blade, usually the big machete. Freddy has all those little claws. Jason never speaks. Freddy can't shut up. Jason wears a mask to hide his horrible disfigurement, and Freddy, of course, gleefully shows his hideously burned and scarred face. It enjoys tormenting people with his visage. So we have a lot of big discrepancies, but there's more to it than that. Freddy Krueger hates his mother, despises, fears and loathes her. Jason adores his mum, worships her in fact, and carries out her mission to punish those people who have, through their irresponsible, immoral activities, drinking and smoking and doing drugs and extramarital sex, all that naughty immorality, neglecting the children. That's how Jason drowned in the first place, and why his mother went all wacko and went off on revenge. And after she was killed, he returned from beyond the watery grave to carry out her campaign of vengeance against immorality, almost in a sort of Protestant work ethic taken to a ridiculous extreme, puritanical point of view. Whereas Freddy, who was a lapsed Roman Catholic because his mother was a nun, very different way of thinking. He is a deviant, degenerate, sexual predator of children who goes about molesting them in life and murdering them, and then after life feasts on their very souls. Indeed, Freddy, although in life preferred little kids, as a degenerate demon of the dreamscape, he has preferred adolescent children, primarily teenagers in their adolescence who have more vivid dreams, I suppose. He goes after them to suck their souls and get that hormonal power into his very being. Whereas Jason prefers young adults, some teenagers in high school, but primarily the majority of his victims, his targets, have been college-age kids. Those who work as camp counselors, who, of course, engage in all that naughty sex and drugs and rock and roll and don't pay attention to the children. You ever notice in these movies that Jason doesn't go after little kids? Tommy Jarvis he tried to kill, but he couldn't. When Jarvis confronted him with his own past, he was immobilized. He couldn't bring himself to harm a child, and that's why Jarvis is the only person to successfully kill Jason ever. He was actually dead for a while because of this, not just dormant and then immediately resurrects. It took several years before Jason got out of the grave because of lightning or some shit, and Jarvis himself stupidly dug him up. But even though it was Corey Feldman and he should have killed him, he couldn't. And in the same way, another child was pursued by Jason, but it wasn't even him, it was an imposter in Part 5. And there are several of the films where he goes right past a cabin full of little kids and doesn't bother them at all. The kids say, oh, we're dead meat. Doesn't happen. He doesn't want to kill the little kids. He's not interested in murdering innocence. He's interested in murdering the opposite of innocence. He's interested in punishing the sin. Whereas Freddy, innocence is exactly what he's out to murder. So there's a very different operandi, even though these seem to be picking on the same victims. The truth is they're very diametrically opposed, naturally opposites, and thus, of course, they couldn't ever be friends. And so that eternal conflict between these two polar opposite powers of darkness, clashing and combining and fighting, that will be so exciting to see them do this in the house. Of course, we have American Werewolf in London. American Werewolf in London was presented in 2013, and they have said they're going to try to replicate the house nearly exactly. Although there'll be a few additional scenes here and there, some new wolves, and the wolves will be done up much better, and they've posted images of what the wolves look like now and some of the makeups, and they do look far superior to the ones they did before. And I imagine they're going to do the house better this time than last time, even though they'll still be following a similar blueprint. Nonetheless, it is one of the most popular houses of all time. My personal favorite house ever of all the houses I've seen in the past 24 years. And I've seen them all. So, I'm not sad it's coming back, but it just amazes me. People are so shocked and say, oh my God, they just did the house 2 years ago and they're bringing it back already? And some of the same people try to negatively compare it to Hallows Scream, which makes no sense because they do the same houses over and over year after year. I mean, the same house the very next year as they did the year before. They've always done that. So that's like saying, oh gee, this orange is a little bit tart. It's mostly sweet, but it's a little bit tart, so I can't eat it. Instead, I'm going to have a lemon. I mean, that makes no sense. I think they're just biased against HHN for some odd Black Knight reason. I don't know. But Werewolf, and I'm amused. I'm amused by this because I can recall a time when it was expected that houses came back. Way, way, way back when the whole thing began in Orlando in 1991, they had a house called Dungeon of Terror in the Jaws Q area. It was the first ever house. It was quite delightful. But a lot of people were a bit upset because after standing in line for nearly 3 hours, they walked through the house and got out in just a few minutes, maybe 5-6 minutes at the most. Some people may remember or think they remember 15-20 minutes going through that house. That's actually inaccurate. It was actually much quicker than that, and very, very warm and muggy in there. But it was an amazing house and quite well done, the first one ever. And so the following year, 1992, they brought the same house back. In fact, they didn't even take down all the sets in the Q area since they weren't using it for anything else. And some of the set pieces they brought back from a warehouse and reinstalled, but it was the same house. They added a couple of more scenes to make it a bit longer, but nevertheless, it was the same house done over the second year. They had another house that year, People Under the Stairs. But In 1993, I remember vividly working for Disney at the time, some people, cast members, saying, "Oh my God, over at Universal they're not going to have Horror Nights this year." I said, "What do you mean?" "Oh, they can't, because they're reopening Jaws. And because they're reopening Jaws, then they won't have any place to put the Dungeon of Terror. And if without the Dungeon of Terror, there won't be any Horror Nights." As if they had to do the same house over every year. As if they had to. And now, all these years later, people are complaining because they're doing the same house over, not the following year, but 2 years later. And that's just silly.